they have their shills and their useful idiots already. Which brings me to the next story. Yahoo News. 100 plus Politico staffers send letter to CEO railing against publishing Ben Shapiro. And this is an example. So what we're just talking about is that if you're starting to become too influential, too powerful, they'll come after you, try and take you down. If what you're saying goes against the established narrative, they will try and stop you. Ben Shapiro is fairly mainstream conservative, so he's not that threatening. But there are many people, and they've been banned. Parler, for instance. Parler is a threat to the narrative, banned. Now, Ben Shapiro is still not perfectly aligned, so he's just outside where they want the narrative to be. Here's what happens. Yahoo says, more than 100 Politico staffers signed onto a letter to publisher Robert L. Britton expressing disgust with allowing right-wing firebrand Ben Shapiro to guest author one day's edition of the Playbook, and with the outlet's subsequent handling of the fallout. Earlier this month, the Beltway news outlet handed over the keys to its signature news product to Shapiro, a talk radio host and pundit who has long been one of the most controversial voices in right-wing media. That's actually 100% not true. In right-wing media, Ben Shapiro is not controversial at all. He's actually fairly,
mainstream.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, with all due respect, tepid. Like, you're not turning on Ben Shapiro and hearing some ranting lunatic calling for insurrection. You're hearing a guy giving his opinion, and it's like... Lawyer. Yeah, he's a lawyer, and it's just very much like, oh, that was a good point, Ben, and it's very normal.
But the worst thing about this is that it's journalists doing it to me. I can say this as a journalist.
They're not journalists.
Okay, they're people who call themselves journalists. And if you're a journalist and you don't believe in open debate and free speech and you think other people's ideas make you unsafe, right? You are not a journalist. Learn to code. Do something else because you do not belong in this. Look, I'm going to get banned for that. But it's seriously, it's sick. I mean, these people have come to see ostensibly neutral outlets. Like Politico is not supposed to be a left-wing thing. It's not supposed to be Jacobin, right? As their zones where even just a momentary one-day intervention of a conservative voice violates their safe space. Makes them feel betrayed by the institution they work for. That is diagnostic of a sick mentality.
Well, here's what they say. According to multiple Politico insiders familiar with the situation, the letter to Albritton criticized the decision to publish Shapiro, claiming it had demoralized a substantial portion of the newsroom, but also railed against the response to criticism offered by editor-in-chief Matt Kaminsky. It's an internal matter and will be handled as such, a political spokesperson told the Daily Beast. During a combative meeting on January 14th, the day of Shapiro's publication, the top editor defended the editorial decision to irate staffers by claiming mischief making has always been a part of Politico's secret sauce. We were an upstart. Some of that sensibility is always going to be a part of this publication. The staff letter sent last week to Albritton maintained that Kaminsky had not appropriately apologized for his responses. Additionally, referencing an email he sent to staff on January 15th, which was obtained and reviewed by the Daily Beast. The top editor expressed regret for his initial response about making mischief, but reiterated that publishing Shapiro was part of his hopes to experiment and mix things up. And that's why they don't like it. Because I'm sure there were a lot of new conservatives who came to Politico and liked what they were seeing, and there were probably some moderates who heard an opinion they hadn't heard before. But let me tell you why this is all BS. It's very, very simple. Remember when there was a collective scream that we all could physically hear when Tom Cotton wrote an op-ed saying, send in the troops? Mm-hmm. It was like one day I just heard a... And I was like, what's happening up in my window? I could hear it everywhere. I was all of these leftists screaming in news media, by the way, about how awful it was that they dared publish this in the New York Times. Send in the troops, Tom Cotton said, to end the riots in Portland. And then they sent in 25,000 troops to Washington, D.C. to prevent an insurrection. Oh, but that's different. That's okay. Now they're all happy. Now they're all like, well, it's good that we have our security here. They're keeping us safe. Apparently, Nancy Pelosi requested crew-manned machine guns in a civilian... Yes, this is... was it Ken Cuccinelli? I think you said this?
Yeah.
It's a remarkable. In a civilian town, in a city. I know it's federal jurisdiction. I should say, Ken Cuccinelli said she requested this of them. Could you imagine what would happen if a bunch of unarmed Trump supporters, well, some of them were armed, but a large group of angry Trump supporters were like waving Trump flags and like shaking a fence. And then Nancy Pelosi was like, use the crewman machine guns. And they started going, there's civilian buildings nearby. You can't do that in a city. Are you nuts? So apparently they were like, no, we don't do that here. Like, that's not how things go. Where's the outcry from the left now? So they're complaining about Ben Shapiro. No, it's not fair. You're publishing him. But we know their complaints are BS.
There's no conservative they would accept. I mean, unless a conservative that's just going to confirm all their beliefs and go totally never Trump and become Jennifer Rubin, Max Boot. Yeah. But here's the thing that bothers me too. It's not even that they were objecting to the content of what he wrote. They were objecting to just him as a person being allowed to speak in that platform because of like tweets from 2007 or something that upset them. It would be actually at least something we could fight against and debate if they were saying that column was bad and shouldn't have been published. No one cares about, none of these people freaking out about it could tell you what he wrote. Most of them didn't even read it, I would bet.
I don't even know what he wrote.
$1,000. It was about impeachment. It was about saying, here's why Senate Republicans aren't going to support impeachment. I talked to them. They tell me this. It was not even very opinionated. He said Democrats overplayed their hand. No, he might have. But
my wife's a doctor.
Right. The funny thing is he does have a style that can be, like you said, kind of combative, but he's very mainstream. He's not the razor fire brand that you'd think these people couldn't handle. If they can't handle him, there's no one they can handle. Right. But the problem is that they frame their opposition to him as a matter of safety, and that will never stop bothering me. Ben Shapiro's ideas make other people unsafe. Well, then there's something wrong with you. You're not an adult. You need to return to 5th grade and develop the emotional stability of a grown human being.
But you know what, man? I read this story a long time ago about this family that was on a beach, and then it was a dad, his wife, and their like 2 kids, and then all of a sudden they saw a large black wolf walking down the beach, and they panicked, and they swam out to this rock that was like 20, 30 feet out, and they huddled together on it, shaking, dripping wet for warmth as the wolf paced back and forth. And it was like this harrowing experience the man had recounted. And I was thinking about that, and I'm like, I wonder what would have happened 200 years ago. Would he have pulled out his like flintlock pistol and his sword and said, "Protect the kids," bang, and then like drew his sword to protect them from the wild beast? Or would they have hid and shivered? And imagine back in the day when we were faced with these very serious challenges and men literally walked around armed all the time. Something like that probably wouldn't have happened. If it was a couple hundred years ago, well, let's say even 100 years ago, they probably would have had a gun on his belt, when and he probably would have just shot the thing or something like that. Now, today's day and age, you still have circumstances where a dude who lives out in the middle of nowhere with his family is going to be armed. But the point I'm bringing up is, like, I read that story and I thought to myself, like, are we gradually just getting weaker and more scared of everything? I think the answer is yes. And this story is a perfect example. Ben Shapiro's opinions now make you unsafe. So you have these colleges where they say things like that, their speech is violence. Like they literally now think but think about it. You have these kids who grow up where they get participation trophies, where no one's allowed to pick on them or insult them in any way. And then they probably feel real physical pain they can't deal with when someone calls them like a stupid doo-doo head. They're like, oh, it hurts. I've never experienced this pain before.
It feeds into itself, right? Because if you start not being exposed to different ideas or different opinions, you don't ever develop the thick skin, and then it just becomes more and more out of control to the point where because the thing is, when they can frame other people's speech as violence or endangering their safety, that is the necessary precursor they have to get to logically argue they should be allowed to shut down that speech preemptively. Because if it's just really offensive, most people won't agree they should be able to shut it down.
Well, to bypass the First Amendment.
Right, exactly.
They didn't even do that here. They said that this demoralized the newsroom. And most of their complaint was with this guy who said that part of what Politico did was cause mischief. So they're not even saying that it was making them feel like they're in danger.
How pathetic was it? How pathetic was it to even claim having Ben Shapiro write an op-ed was mischief? It's not.
It's really not.
He's a mainstream, high-profile, prominent conservative, one of the biggest podcasts in the world.
It was boilerplate, too, the actual article. The article was not controversial. He's written some controversial things, right? It wasn't like he was writing about trans issues. It wasn't like he was writing about abortion. He was explaining Senate Republicans' rationale on impeachment.
It's like you said, they were objecting to him.
Yes.
He could have walked in and said, "Hey, I'm Ben Shapiro," and they would have went like, "Oh, they let him in the building," and they would all scream, and like one guy jumps out the window, and then he's like, "Okay."
But I will say, it only helps him, right? It's like, it is an example of like, they only confirm everything he says about the liberal media when they do stuff like this. And they don't seem to realize that they're just they're proving his point.
And they're only propping him up. That's another thing we have to understand here. Like, this is backfiring, and luckily it is, because sometimes it doesn't and they get their way. But we can't give our way to these people that are, I think, clinically insane. I mean, if you're at a point in life where hearing words makes you feel pain, what's wrong with you? And again, I keep reminding people, one of the most important powers you have as a human being is the power of your reaction.
I gotta add to this, just to say I'm not a long time gun person. You know, I always tell this story in January of last year. I was like, I don't want any guns in my house. Now we got a bunch. Luke's talking about buying a 50 cal, and I was like, yeah, okay. So we like guns. And I remember seeing that story from the journalist who claimed he got PTSD from firing an AR-15. Mm-hmm. So you ever
I'm sorry?
Yeah. Who did he write with? Was it,
I think it was ABC. I'm not sure.
He fired an AR, and I bet it was probably like 5.56.
Yeah.
And he claimed that he got PTSD from shooting it. He could feel the shock wave, and it hurt his arm and all that. And I'm like, here's what's funny, because it's something I didn't understand until I actually experienced it. Game load for a shotgun when you're hunting turkeys has more recoil, is a bigger explosion than an AR-15. So when we went to the range and we had bird shot, I'm like, man, you can feel that bird shot. And then when you're firing the AR, it's like actually not that much at all relative. So if this guy is getting PTSD from an AR-15, complaining it's like it's a weapon of war and he was traumatized from it, I'm like, well, heaven forbid you have to hunt a turkey.
It was
like, wow.
It was the Daily News. The title was, "What is it like to fire an AR-15? It's horrifying, menacing, and very, very loud."
In 2016,
by Gersh Kuntzman.
Fittingly
named. 2016, and the first headline here, it says, "It felt to me like a bazooka and sounded like a cannon."
He said the explosions, loud like a bomb, gave me a temporary form of PTSD. For at least an hour after firing the gun just a few times, I was anxious and irritable.
That's kind of offensive to PTSD victims.
Yes,
very much so.
My favorite image that people have posted on this as a meme is a little girl with a pink shotgun shooting.
She's great. I think she has her own
YouTube channel?
Instagram page where when she does competitive shooting.
I was thinking.
Oh, wait. Look, there was an update on the story. It says, many people have objected to my use of the term PTSD in the above story. The use of this term was in no way meant to conflate my very temporary anxiety with the very real condition experienced by many of our brave men and women in uniform. I regret the inarticulate use of the term to describe my in-the-moment impression of the gun's firepower and apologize for it. I have also posted a follow-up piece here. Oh, did he?
That's exactly what it meant. He says, that's not what I meant. That's exactly what it meant.
He was terrified.
To gun lovers, you can't even have an opinion on assault rifles unless it's theirs. Here's the proof. Bro. He says the gun debate is over. When's this article from? It's from June 15, 2016. In all my years in journalism, coming up on 30, I have never received so much angry mail as I did after yesterday's story. What it's like to fire an AR-15. Bro, it's because you take a turkey hunting... Listen. If you were hunting pheasants or squirrels, there would be a bigger recoil than your AR-15. That's the craziest thing. I've asked all these dudes who are like, we're at the range, and I'm like, what do you think? And they're like, that guy's nuts. Like, what's the weakest possible interpretation of using a gun? Hunting squirrel. And he's gonna have like game load or birdshot, and is gonna be facing more pain from that.
He's untrained too, so it's like what it's like to hit a baseball that's being thrown 100 miles an hour. From someone that's untrained, it's gonna be terrifying. They might get hit by the ball. It might break their head.
Ian, can we take you shooting?
Yeah, sure.
Let's go this weekend. And I think
Ian's been shooting. He fired the 410 out of the governor.
Blasted his heart
we went
out
together.
with it.
Yes.
You fired the shotgun shells, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like a big shotgun shell, but 410 bore out of the revolver. It's pretty big. I'd say it's way.
I thought it was going to be way more kickback than what it was. If you're prepared for it and you have a grip and you're focused, it's very.
Doesn't this tell you how out of touch journalists are with the people they cover? It would be so interesting to go into one of these newsrooms and actually, if you could get them to be honest, right? The Daily News, the New York Times, how many people own a gun and actually know the true answer to that? How many voted for a Republican? Maybe there's like a janitor there. Or like, you know what I mean? To see how many of you go to church? How many of you are pro-life? Any of these issues where it's like the public is split, but the institutions that cover them are so dominated by one side, how can anyone think, even if they were well-intentioned, which I don't really believe anymore, even if they were well-intentioned, I don't see how they could cover a population like that. The funny thing is they say this and they acknowledge this in terms of diversity on the skin surface level. They're saying a newsroom with no black people can't cover America fairly, which maybe that's not true, but they at least acknowledge it in that capacity. They don't acknowledge the same thing for actual ideas and actual perspectives and experiences.
You reminded me of that Huffington Post picture where they took a photo of their editorial board when one day it was all women and it was just a whole bunch of white women and everyone's like, look at how diverse we are, and I'm like, wait, what are you talking about?
They said it was something like, what do you notice about our boardroom? And it was like a bunch of women. It was all women, and then someone was like, there's it's all white people. They're like Huffington Post doesn't hire black people, and then they had to like apologize or something.
Wait,
It's like,
actually, that reminds me of something. Huffington Post opinion, I think it was, actually publicly they released. So I used to pitch op-eds in a job that I was in, and the editor there released like data about the percentage of minority authors we published, the percentage of trans authors that we published, and they promised to do better next year. They're like, we will actively ensure that we publish more black people, more trans people, and it's like, so you're just openly admitting that you're not going to publish the best articles. You're going to ask
crazy.
people, so are you trans, by the
the-
way? I need to know so I
this
can
is-
know whether to run
this
this or
is
not.
a really great op-ed, but who do you like banging?
Right.
Can you publish my opinion? I don't know. Do you like dick or do you like
Like the equality of outcome versus the equality of opportunity. So like if they publish more people that created a love of all humans to work together, as opposed to published more black people and more women that maybe would even cause diversion, cause, what would you call it? Like hate. I can't even think of the word because I don't like it in my lexicon. Yeah, division. So you could have a bunch of white guys that create a space where everyone comes together, or you could have a black guy and a white woman and an African or whatever, all creating a situation where people hate each other.
Listen,
it doesn't matter who they are.
They're never going to publish Enrique Tarrio. When they say they want more black writers, they're not talking about Enrique or Candace Owens or the Hodge twins. They're talking about social justice activists who agree with them. When they're talking about diversity, they're not talking about bringing on people with different ideas. They're talking about people who look different but have the exact same ideas.
Well, and if they don't have the same ideas, then you ain't black.
Right. Yes.
That's Joe Biden for you.
Right. So it's not only
Impressive.
just, or it's like Peter Thiel, right? The LGBT media wrote about him that he's not actually a gay man. He just has sex with other men because he endorsed Trump. Dude, that's literally an article that was published in The Advocate, which is supposed to be a gay rights magazine.
Man, it's the look, saying double standard and hypocrisy has become redundant at this point. It's something special and new. It's just like, you have logic and you have like math and you have formula. What's the opposite? Like abstract absurdism. It's articles that are meant to make no sense on purpose. It's like the art. When you look at art, it's like you have like a beautiful, like we have a picture over there, and it's like a beautiful like aurora borealis, and there's a lake, and that's like a real thing, realism.
Tangible.
And then what's the art called where the
Abstract.
face is all, yeah, abstract art. That's what it is. It's abstract.
modernism,
It's abstract politics.
Right.
It's meaningless, and it's meant to be like that's not possible. A possible thing. Your ideas are nonsensical.
They're like
On
perfect.
purpose.
They're like perfect little establishment slave ninnies that are used to push the agenda and the narrative of controlling people and getting rid of people's freedoms. And they use it over issues, and they use it over these talking points and these buzzwords that absolutely have no meaning. Just like in 1984, Orwellian doublespeak is becoming more and more of a reality.
Yes, but look what people do with freedom. In New York, they bought too large of sodas. So Michael Bloomberg had to put a punitive tax on it so that people would stop buying too large of sodas.
Michael Bloomberg used his freedom to put a ban on other people's sodas.
Yes.
Yeah.
See? You're trying to curtail Michael Bloomberg's freedom?
That SOB had me arrested. I have a long history with him, by the way.
Didn't you yell at him?
He's a dirty, dirty politician. He promised to help out the first responders and the 9/11 first responders, police officers, firefighters, medics, military men who were sick and dying after 9/11 told me, hey, he's promising to give us this funding and support this bill if you personally, Luke, stop harassing him.
What?
And confronting him, yeah. Yeah, I don't know if you want to get into this story, but I every time he did a radio show, every time he did a ribbon cutting, every time he did a gala, every time he did a public event, I was on him like white on rice, confronting him and asking him, like, you're cutting support. He said that first responders were sick because of PTSD and not the actual, what was it, that dust that creates...
Asbestos?
Asbestos, yeah. He said, it's not the asbestos in the air that's hurting all these first responders and rescue workers, it's PTSD. There was...
it's psychosomatic that they can't breathe.
No, I worked there.
No, trust me. There was a
nasty.
police officer who died that he called the not a hero, James Sadroga, and I was
God.
on him. I was like, what are you doing cutting funding from these incredibly important individuals that came to New York City on 9/11 at Ground Zero to rescue people, and now they're being even denied basic health benefits that they had in their contract. So I was on Bloomberg because I knew many of these guys. A lot of them were my friends. A lot of them were...
Bloomberg never funded it.
A first responder organization came to me, the John Feelgood Foundation, and they said, look, Luke, we just got a call from the mayor's office. He's telling us that Bloomberg's running for a re-election. He wants you to stop questioning him at every press conference. He wants you to stop calling into all of his radio shows. If you leave him alone for his reelection, he will give us this bill, right? I did, and I went to other gala events, and I covered other, book signings, other ribbon cuttings where he was at. I just kind of gave him a side eye, but I didn't do anything, and I kept my word to the first responders, even though I told them that Bloomberg was going to lie. Bloomberg gets reelected for a third term. One of the first thing he does is he cuts medical benefits for thousands of 9/11 first responders. They call me back, this particular organization. They're like, Luke, he lied. He screwed us over. I'm like, I told you so. I went to confront him, and literally they had NYPD intelligence, a specific branch, waiting for me as I'm going up the escalator to one of the gala events. And they're like, Radowski, you're coming with us. I'm like, what? No, I'm not. I'm going outside. They grabbed me, held me down. I'm like, I want to go. I want to leave. They're like, no, you're not leaving. They came back with 15 police officers, and they said, Luke, we told you to leave. Why didn't you leave? I'm like, yeah, I got it here on camera that you told me I can't leave. Took away the camera, threw me in jail. The police officers were fans, so they were literally like taking me out and giving me smokes and out of the jail cell. NYPD intelligence came down, made sure to send me down to central bookings for 3 days.
Wow.
During the weekend, even though it was a criminal trespassing charge that went on for 2 years, found not innocent, but that was one of the reasons that the Canadian government used to ban me from Canada for 10 years, because they said I had a criminal arrest record, according to the FBI.
What you're saying is that you confessed to committing a crime?
No, I didn't commit anything, but I was never found guilty. They dropped the charges.
Interesting.
But Bloomberg is one of the dirtiest, nastiest politicians out there.
And isn't it crazy that the Democrats are fine with it because he gives them money?
Exactly.
Like when he ran for president, people finally talked about it a little, but mostly conservatives. This dude has the longest history of racism and sexism and Me Too and misogyny. I mean, he literally did the stop and frisk where it's like, all right, you look black, get up against the wall, let the police violate your civil liberties.
There's a recording of him arguing with people about how it's right to racially profile.
Right.
And this guy was running on the Democratic ticket, and he had support.
Yes, because he had the checks. That's really, it's a surface level commitment to all of this diversity stuff, because ultimately they knew that they needed him to beat Trump, so they decided, whatever, all our standards are flexible.
It's amazing that he look, there are arguments for stop and frisk. I don't agree. I think it's a Fourth Amendment violation. But there are arguments about you go where the crime is. I've heard that before. It's like, well, if there's crime happening there, then we go there to try and stop it. He didn't even do that. Like, there's an actual argument for people to say, like, well, where are they supposed to go? To the wealthy areas? No, Bloomberg literally said, but that's what the criminals look like. Like, oh, dude, what?
I mean, I was in New York City during stop and frisk, and there was a number of occasions where even I was grabbed up, thrown against the wall by some disrespectful NYPD officers that were rude, that were antagonizing. I got beat up by them, previously before on a separate incident when I was younger, and they just came up on you and they started grabbing you all in your personal, parts, and I can't even describe what they did, a number of instances, but this is what they were trying to normalize. Government agents walking up to you on the street as you're doing your business, and throwing you against your wall, insulting you, and putting their hands down your pants.
That's crazy, because if that had gotten federal traction, I mean, that's like massively totalitarian.
Yeah. But that's what these elitists, that's what a lot of these billionaires, that's what a lot of these people call for. That's what they want, because it gives them ultimate power. It gives them something that, of course, they can't get enough of, just like money. It's like people reach a certain level where they have so much money, they only could focus on having more money, no matter how much they have. So the same goes for power. It's an addictive substance, just like attention is. And it's something that needs to be addressed against these megalomaniac psychopaths, which are in Washington, D.C.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. We do the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., so come back to check us out when we go live. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, hit the notification bell, and we are also available on all podcast platforms for free if you want to listen to us there. Thanks for hanging out, and we will see you all next time.